welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, India's largest platform for entrepreneurs. I'm Sunanda Jaiseelan. This week, we're kick-starting a very special series that we're calling India at 75, bringing you some of the biggest voices and names when it comes to the economy, when it comes to India Inc., when it comes to investing, all of that being covered here on the show. High-level, thought-provoking conversations. Today, we're kick-starting those series of interviews with a conversation on the macroeconomy. Where is India headed? What lessons have we learned from the past 75? What lessons are we taking forward to the next 75? All of that being posed to our big guest, someone who needs no introduction. I'm in conversation with Arvind Panagariya. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us here on the Leaders of Tomorrow for this very special conversation talking about India's 75 years, looking forward to all the changes that we're possibly likely to see, exciting changes, particularly so for our small businesses. And we're really hoping that the mid to short term is going to be a year of growth for our entrepreneurs watching this very exclusive and special conversation. So with that, thank you so much for joining us here. The last time we spoke with you, Dr. Panagariya, that was at the end of December 2020. We've had now 7 months that have gone past since then, and so much has changed. I want to kick this off by asking you how things are in the US. Obviously, things are very different in the US compared to what's happening here. We have possibly a third wave coming, hopefully coming out of a second wave. Things are not looking all that good. I would like to kickstart by really getting your comments, your observations on how things have been in the past 7 months.
Thank you, Sunanda. Really glad to be back with you. And indeed, as you have said, much has changed, or not enough has changed, whichever way, depending on how you look at it. India is not the only one actually reeling with COVID, but the United States too. Even here, in spite of fairly good progress having been made on vaccination, we are experiencing the Delta version driven infections now. Today the figure has crossed 70,000 here, which is actually pretty high, and so I still think that as here and as in India, ultimately wearing masks is very, very important, and we seem to not learn from our experience. That's something that needs to be done,
Sure.
with devotion. CDC dropped here the mask mandate, and that led to the So I think the basic scenario to me still remains that ultimately the economic recovery will follow the recovery from COVID. If people cannot go to work, if people cannot go to shop, then there is a problem. And so we have made in India, that is good progress. We can be a little bit faster. We are doing, even averaging now probably around 4 million vaccinations per day. We need to push it to maybe 5 to 6 million, somewhere there. Prospects look good, because I think it's right now not a demand issue, meaning it's not a hesitancy problem. It is, I think, the availability of vaccines,
Sure.
and that is improving day by day, and so I'm sort of optimistic that we'll get to 5 to 6 million a day. Once we get there, I think we should be in good shape by the end of the year.
Sure. I want to refer to the recent comments of the Finance Ministry, sounding very bullish, sticking to the double-digit growth targets. This despite the fact that everyone, including the IMF, has said we don't expect more than single digit. How are you really reading those comments, sir?
I'm not so pessimistic because remember one thing that we fell close to 7.5 to 8% last year. So the base is now significantly lower on which we have to grow. Now hopes were a little better. There is no doubt prior to the second wave, and second wave has kind of taken away some of the sheens that existed. But still, we are into July now. So April, May, June. So first quarter is behind us. In July, I think there is still time to recover and get to a path which could still possibly get us to double digit. I don't rule it out because, all we need to do is a couple of percentage above the previous year, and we get there. So I still keep my optimism, but much will depend on any forecast in this atmosphere is going to go awry if you go wrong on the COVID waves. I think in the end, COVID wave is determining factor right now.
Okay, fair enough. You were talking in your opening comments about the vaccination drive. One of the reasons, of course, being quoted for this low optimism by most international bodies is what they're saying has been a very slow vaccination drive here in the country. I want to cite official figures. I'm sure you're very well aware of these figures, but this is more for the benefit of our viewers. Official data suggesting that the cumulative COVID-19 vaccination doses has crossed 450 million, with those in the 18 to 44 age group receiving more than 153 million jabs. I was noticing some comments that you had made in July of this year, where you're saying that the rate and the pace has to be much faster. But given that we're counting down to the festive season, which is a big demand. Which is a big area of demand really for small businesses. The year end again, small businesses are likely to see huge demand. If we aren't able to keep pace with the kind of vaccinations that are required here in the country, do you expect that some demand and some sentiment would definitely get hit?
Well, it also depends on how well we behave in terms of following the other protocols related to COVID. If we religiously wear our masks and, particularly going out, even today in New York City, if I have to go out, I wear 2 masks, because many others are not wearing it. So I think at my age, I need to be doubly careful. And that's the sort of attitude one has to kind of go in with. But if we don't do that, look, even if the vaccination rate had been where I would have liked to see it, even then that would not be enough, particularly for Diwali kind of crowds. If you are not, the US experience clearly kind of shows that for a population that's 18 plus, the proportions are I think somewhere around 65% of this 18 plus population has been vaccinated now, with both jabs. Overall, it's closer to 50%, if you include all population. And even so, the Delta wave in the US has risen up so rapidly, within a matter of couple of weeks, it has gone to 70,000. So absolutely, so if our expectation is that most of the people will not be wearing masks, then I think, yes, it will hit. We don't know, again, this virus is very, very unpredictable because, remember that the masks last year had also dropped around Diwali, which is November 2020. But the second wave did not hit us till early February. In fact, there's a whole period of November, December, January when the infections actually kept declining. And then February, suddenly it hit us. So where it will hit, we do not know. When it will hit, we don't know. But it will definitely hit if we don't behave.
Sure. It was, in fact, very surprising to see that the US had issued that, the CDC had issued that no mask mandate. You see sporting tournaments on Wimbledon, the Olympics. So it's quite surprising here in India because our scenario is just so different from what seems to be happening globally. But like you're saying, we have continued taking our precautions no matter where you are. I want to talk about your views on inflation, sir. We've seen inflation rising, of course, on the back of rising oil prices. But if you could do some forward gazing and really talk about where perhaps you're expecting inflation will be in the country in the mid to short term, anything you'd like to tell us?
Personally, I'm not an inflation hawk. I put myself in the dove category. So I'm sort of quite okay with inflation of 5 to 6% in a developing economy. Per capita income is only $2,000 today, and in a growing economy, which our aspiration is 7 to 8% at least. 5 to 6% inflation is tolerable to me. I think, because profits are in nominal terms. A lot of the other things that people look at are in nominal magnitudes. And therefore, inflation does kind of help the expectations. Now, WPI is a lot higher, right? Yeah. WPI has been robustly, 10, 11%. It is, and ultimately it can come to impact the CPI as well. So I think RBI will need to be cautious, and it is cautious. So we might see some tightening going, if this rate of WPI begins to kind of spill over into CPI as well. Sure. And I'm sure the RBI is looking at it very carefully, very cautiously. So we'll see. But at the moment, 5 to 6, I think this is in tolerance range, and it also is going to not depend on what the crops look like. If harvests are good, sure. A very large part of the CPI depends on food grains and food prices. Those should do well. Yeah. Oil prices probably will not rise up all that much more now. So I think I'm cautiously optimistic.
We need to do everything that we can to ensure that COVID goes away. It's not just the vaccination, but other appropriate behavior as well. Do you think India at this point can afford another lockdown, sir?
Almost no country is locking down, certainly not in the way we locked down last year in March and April. So that kind of lockdown to me is almost now unacceptable. It has become, by people, and we have done a lot more learning. So it's not required either. But some precautions may have to be taken. I mean, I was clearly of the view that, in the second wave, that we have to take some precautions that would be nationwide. But in the end, we did see actually that the states themselves took such precautions that amounted to fairly strict kind of lockdown, not quite as harsh as the one in March, April 2020, but still fairly tough.
So my question to you is on joblessness and the lack of jobs which are being created in the economy. First and foremost, and I'm sure again that you're very well aware of these figures, but joblessness in the Indian economy was at a 45-year high in 2017, 2018. What's going to change that in your opinion?
2017-18. You're referring to the PLFS, Periodic Labor Force Survey, where the unemployment rate was about 6.1%. I think that's what you're referring to, which is, of course, almost twice of what it used to be. But look, that particular joblessness rate, still 6%, is not a particularly high rate. It is in many countries the natural rate of unemployment, people who are kind of seeking jobs, looking around, waiting. And in our country, of course, because the families provide quite a bit of cushion, our young people often are now increasingly, don't take up jobs that they don't like. And this particular unemployment has concentrated more in the age group of, something like 25 to 30 or somewhere there, but when you go beyond 30, then people begin to accept the job offers that they get. That one, is a part of the long-term trend, which doesn't worry me all that much. But it is the COVID impact, that clearly is hurting a lot of the people in the short run. And at the moment, what the government really needs to do is to do the social security, social safety nets, which it is providing, to the extent that our per capita income allows us to do. The government has been doing it. To me, the employment scenario has to do more with the longer term, and particularly in terms of creating good jobs for the people.
Sure.
And that is where our big weakness remains, that, you got almost 42% of the workforce in agriculture. In the end, they are underemployed grossly. Even in our industry, when you look at the micro and small enterprises, the average output per worker is very low. So it's very low productivity employment and therefore low wage employment. And this massive underemployment that exists in the economy that needs to be addressed. That's a longer term problem. And it ultimately ties back into the, generally small economic units in India. Farms are tiny and firms are tiny. And so that really leads to low productivity. And we need to actually have a more holistic strategy. That's a whole discussion about a lot of the reforms.
So I want to refer to some very recent data then, not as of 2017-18, but as of 2021 reports suggesting 25 million people losing their jobs because of the pandemic. The number of jobs which need to be created in the country to sustain the kind of people entering the labor force needs to be about 20 million, well-known figures per year. We're creating, I understand, not more than 4 million a year. So even the number of jobs being created are far lower than what needs to be created. A lot of people have lost their jobs. What is perhaps then the mid to short term looking like, sir, for you?
Yeah, so there we get back to this whole issue, Sunanda, of how well we manage the COVID onslaught. And in the end, so therefore vaccinate, and also wear your masks, wash your hands, use sanitizers. I think those are the things to do, keep the infections at bay. If we can return to work and people can begin to go to shop at the pre-COVID levels, I think jobs will come back.
You've spoken previously in the past, many times in the past, about the need to have a robust plan to boost exports and really break out of this chain of import substitution. Do you think the pandemic has finally brought home, the fact that we need to perhaps not be dependent, say, on China, for instance, for our raw material, or to become more just self-sufficient and independent? Do you think we've really learned our lessons from the first and the second wave, sir?
I do not know. I think on trade, unfortunately, we continue to think in terms of import substitution. I have really not seen any indication that we are changing our strategies there. There has been some kind of mention of negotiating free trade agreements with the European Union and the United Kingdom, but I'm not sure that we have actually made genuine progress. These things take a very long time. And so the things that the particular thing we can do on our own is to liberalize ourselves. Where the custom duties are excessively high, we can bring them down. But I don't see that happening yet. One figure I would mention is that, custom duties that are 15% or higher used to be 13% of all tariff lines in 2014-15. Today they are more than 25%. The proportion of duties that are 15% or higher has doubled between 2014-15 and 2021. Now, that's a lot of high duty, a lot of hiking up of duties, and that's all import substitution. And then the second way we are trying to import substitute is through all this production subsidies, the PLI, the production linked subsidies. In the impact on output, impact on production activity of the subsidies is very similar to that of tariff, almost identical to that of tariff, that of custom duties. So that is reinforcing the same import substitution approach to which we seem to have turned. So that is where I get worried, because ultimately import substitution leads to small firms. We have done this for 6-7 years now, very concertedly in the electronics industry. I don't see that we have produced very substantial, large domestic manufacturers. Now, some of the foreign manufacturers have come in, Samsung and all, who are on scale. They are on scale. But even they are largely selling in the domestic market. They are not exploiting the export market. So, and that's because that's how the incentives have been given them. So I think that's an area still requires work. A lot of the other reforms the present government has done, and we will reap their benefits, I have absolutely no doubt, going forward once we conquer COVID. But on the trade side, I think we are still lagging behind.
That's all we had the time for in this episode. We hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you have any feedback for us, as always, we love hearing from you. Our contact details coming up on your screens as we speak. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good night.